Today's topic is we should only be allowed one child. On my right I have the proposition year 7 for this statement, and on my left I have the opposition year 8 against. The first speaker from the proposition, please ask.
Hello, we are the proposition and we are arguing for the fact that we should only have one child. Children are expensive. According to the US Department of Labour, for families that make roughly $60,000 a year, each child costs more than $250,000 by the time they reach 18, and that doesn't include college costs. To top that, Newman said children cost their parents $50,000 in food alone before they reach 18. Another fact is, having only one child is much easier for parents than having 2 or more children. Having children is the most destructive thing a person could do to the environment. According to a study, researchers from Lund University in Sweden found out that having one fewer child in a family can save an average of 58.6 tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions per year.
Would the first speaker from the opposition please ask.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're the opposition and we're debating if we should only be allowed one child. Do you have siblings? Are you the oldest or the youngest? If you're the oldest, imagine if you never had any other siblings. I know. It might seem great, but after a while you're going to end up feeling really lonely and bored. If you're the youngest, then you might not even be alive, or never have that older sister or brother to help you when things get tough, or help you with your schoolwork. Studies have shown that having one child increases early death by 18%. What if you have twins or triplets? Are you really going to make their family sacrifice them? Having siblings has so many benefits. It increases their language skills, even through their constant arguing and bickering. It teaches them to work together, whether it's distracting techniques to get the last piece of cake, or negotiation skills. It teaches them to work as a team. It gives them company, whether it's potato show in the garden, or throwing all the toys out the toy box. It will give them a friend for life. The population in the UK is rising at 66.5 million people at astonishing rates. I understand we need our population to decrease, but it's taking people's human rights away to do it. And if you put a rule down for only one child, isn't that going to want people make them want even more?
Would the second speaker from the proposition please ask.
It's been very interesting listening to some of your arguments, but I'm here to prove most of them wrong. Who here has siblings? Put your hand up. Put your hand up if you have had a fight with your sibling. Be honest here. Who has had a verbal argument with their sibling? That's most of you. If you have no siblings, you can't play or do anything with them, but you still have friends and it encourages you to go to school.
The second speaker of the opposition please ask.
The way we see it is that children need one another to get through difficult times. There's a reason for why people become so distressed when they can't have them. It's because they complete us, explain to us who we are and why we are here. Parenthood is the fulfillment of biological purpose. Many would argue that motherhood makes women's bodies more beautiful, not less, and medical research indicates that not having children or having them late in life sustainably increases women's chances of developing some sort of cancer. Now, when you said there'll be less CO2, well, in fact, if we want to reduce carbon emissions, we have to think about all the aspects of how cars let off a lot more. And yes, it has worked in China, but only because China was overpopulated by the government saying they can have as many children as possible. Just like Japan, once they upgraded their healthcare system and education system from the average of 5 children, went to 2. Thanks for listening, and undeniably, you should agree with our point of view.
Okay, now we're going to have an open debate. You may start and there is 10 minutes.
Justin, B and Ted said about death being 18% earlier. May I ask you where you got that information from, and if you're sure about that fact? My sources tell me that for every child you have, you die 95 weeks earlier.
So if you had been listening, I said that my information was from Gallup, which I've checked is a resourceful site and very reliable.
You
You had a very good speech, but there was one thing that stuck out the most. So imagine you asked the audience about if siblings fought or not. Can you just imagine if siblings didn't fight? That would just be, that would just be a bit too nice. That would be random. Now, trust me, I have 2 brothers, and that is just crazy. But if you didn't have siblings and you only had one child, your parents would trust you to be more independent, and they knew you wouldn't argue with other people. This is a random question, but whose parents, grandparents have brothers and sisters? Please raise your hand. Now, imagine if grandparents and parents were the youngest child. Family trees and maybe almost half of us in this room wouldn't exist. You wouldn't exist, Finton. You wouldn't exist, Harry. Questions from the audience and judges. Yeah.
I thought, is it Benjamin? Benjamin, I think he just posed a very reasonable question to this team that didn't get answered just now. So I'd quite like you to respond to the question. Benjamin, could you just remind us what the question was?
How would you solve the environmental issue if we're allowed to have more than one child?
If we want to reduce the carbon emission, we have to think about the aspects of our cars let off a lot more. So say if you have a 5-seater car, then if you only have, will have one child, then there wouldn't be enough room for other people to get a new car. And if we upgraded the health system and education systems, then it would help us from having more children.
But then you would still have to put the rule in later on to solve overpopulation, wouldn't you?
Okay, closing speakers from the population group.
The problem with the opposition is that they look at this issue on an individual scale, how all the families get affected. They're not looking at this on a global scale, how the world's being affected. The choice made affects the future of the world.
And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we should only have one child. Thank you all for my decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to restate our argument of why we should have more than one child. First and foremost, I would like to bring up the fact that having one child increases your death rate by 18%, and according to Gallup, 48% of people have said that they're happier with a child. Some people say that people sacrifice a lot to have children, but children give back, especially when adults are older and more vulnerable. We don't need to make this ban because in Japan, once they upgraded the healthcare system and the education system, from the average of 5 children per family, went down to 2 children per family. We got this information from BBC.
You were going on about global quite a lot in that debate. So having 2 kids is a sweet spot for health. It can make people happy. The risk of an early death increases by 18%. May I just say that having one child isn't going to make a big difference to the environment. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you make the right decision.